You comfortable? Are you comfortable? Oh, you can't sit there. Of course, we're about to art, and there she is. So yes, we have a clean paper. We have a kitten off of that away, laying down, taking a bath, ready to watch. And we have a new art piece. And yeah, the previous one that I tried twice, I decided I'm just not ready for. And it's not just that the black lines were a problem. It's the whole idea of creating iridescence in glass, and I haven't figured out how to do that. So I've put that in the probably above my current skill set. We're going to work on things, and hopefully eventually we will get back to it, because I still really want to do that piece. But yeah, we had to set it aside. We're going to try again. So far I have started 4 projects and 2 have been finished. We're going 50-50, because one friend said, or one person said to me on the butterfly, not every project that you start is for finishing. Sometimes they're just for learning. So we're going to move on to something else that is also challenging, but not quite in the same way. And what do you think? We're going to do this one. I'm going to do the bud. I'm not going to do this long stem. I'm going to do this bud. And I think the most challenging part will be the bird, the hummingbird, especially the wings, since they are not clear. But I'm going to give this one a shot. You have to let me know what you think about that. In the meantime, we should go ahead and get started with that. So as usual, I'm going to start with some light lines. The bird is the only thing that I'm not confident about. Never done a bird before, but I think these lines are fairly clean and easy. The challenge will be doing the coloring in, the painting, if you will, the making up, if you will, of the bird. But yeah, I think we can do this. I think I can do this. I'm always nervous starting, though, for some reason. Going to have to figure out how I want to handle the bottom of the bird. The photo doesn't show his whole tail, but you'd like, no, I don't like having things without a definitive edge on one end. But I think we've got our bird. I think I did pretty good with the outline. It's going to be the actual coloring that's going to look it. All right. Let's do some more detailing up here so we can get started on the actual painting of the thing. I don't know what to call it. Whenever I say that I'm going to do some art, that's exactly how I say it. I'm doing some art. Because, you know, you paint or you pastel. You can say I'm going to go do some pastels, some pastel work. I have makeup. What do you do? What do you call it when it's makeup? It's different. It's not paint. It's not sketching. There's some sketching, but yeah, I don't know what to call it. Love the texture of this. I'm not going to get this same texture, which is probably going to drive me bonkers, but it's almost like something someone created it out of crochet or knit. Just the way the thing looks. I mean, the texture of it, not the actual way the image is, so to speak. Those are the edges I could find on the flower. It's kind of hard to see some of them, but they're there. So hopefully I done good. I think I went too far down on this one, but we're gonna go. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it. We have to try not to be as fussy. Just a little bit not as fussy. I am doing this on Thanksgiving, and for those who haven't been on the channel long, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving. We celebrate tomorrow, which is Indigenous Day, because our family has a lot of indigenous in it. I'm indigenous Puerto Rican, indigenous Venezuelan, and indigenous Colombian. I can't remember which indigenous contribution that my husband got, but it wasn't here from the United States. I work on both of our trees, his and mine. We never did. One of the reasons I started working on his tree is because he wanted to figure out who his birth father was. And while we have narrowed it down, the people we need to take tests in the family haven't done so. So we've just narrowed it down to 3 people. We're pretty sure which one it is, although members of the family don't agree with the assessment. They think it's one of the brothers, which I get. Most of us don't want to think of our parents having affairs on our, on our other parent. But anyway, some of his family comes from Croatia, and he's got some of the Nordic areas, and there are actually indigenous cultures up there. And I shouldn't say that like it's so amazing. We all, even England, started off with indigenous cultures, indigenous to them. At some point. We were all tribal at some point, let's put it that way. Some people might object to their culture, their tribal beginnings being called indigenous, but I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone with that assessment, so. At any rate. So I actually stopped celebrating Thanksgiving, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We'll say about 4 years ago, somewhere in that time range. And also transitioned how I celebrate Christmas. When my kids were growing up, I was full on born again evangelical Christian. I was in that church. Several things happened to pull me out of the church. I mean, I always had questions about some of the things in the Bible, not just from a scientific standpoint, but just from the contradictory standpoint. All these contradictions. And I remember in one of my Bible groups being told, oh, well, the first story is just an overview. The second story gives you the details. It didn't always work for me, but I was a good Christian girl at the time, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to take it on faith. And then things started to happen in both my marriage and in my church that just, in the end, made it so that I did not feel comfortable being part of the Christian church. Which, of course, set me up for finally leaving when things got really bad. The first thing that got really bad is a supposed friend who ended up being not a friend and was saying and doing things that hurt. And at first it was just like, okay, so she's human. We all do shit, right? But But the further on it got, the more I was just like, you know what? I can be a bitch to people. I can hurt people. And I don't have to be a Christian to do that. And I don't have to, being a Christian to do that. And using your Christianity to forgive that just struck me as wrong on so many levels. I mean, it really did. It just wasn't right. And then, as my marriage was falling apart, I got a taste of the misogyny. My ex-husband's mother was an abusive, bitch doesn't do her justice. She was just one of the worst people. And she was racist as hell. His dad was racist as hell. And she made it very clear from the very beginning of that marriage that she didn't like it. She didn't like me. And so she did things to deliberately tear it down. One of the issues we had is, we're a brand new couple. We do not have an insane amount of money. But his spending habits. Now, mind you, I was no paragon in virtue either, okay? Spending, I will say, has always been a problem for me, as many of you on this channel have noted in the past when I've said things like, okay, so I've got to find a way to not spend as much for the channel, and yet what do, right? I spend on the channel, which, I mean, it's fine. It happens, right? I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. And, but I was trying to learn how to not to do that, particularly after our kids were born. I was trying to learn how to be more responsible with our spending. And so he's not making, we're a brand new family. He had just gotten out of the military. So he's not in a job that's making a lot of money. And so she started getting upset because our bills were taking up all of our money, and he had no extra money to spend for things like snacks at work and shit like that. And I get that to a degree. But at the same time, she needed to leave us to figure this out and to do what we needed to do to make sure we were doing okay, and those bills were paid, and those bills came before snacks and all of that shit. I will say this is also the woman who went out and bought me a bunch of dresses that I didn't ask for. I only liked about half of them. And a few months later, she asked how the job hunting was going. And I said, I'm not job hunting. And she said, I bought you those clothes so you could go out and get a job. I had a new baby. I was like, nope, we've told you time and time again. We've told you time and time again that I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom with our kids. And we had told her repeatedly that this was our plan. And she just didn't want to get the memo. Just didn't want to get the memo. And kept trying to pressure me to go to work. Even though I had an infant at home. And this was our plan anyway. So the other thing that she did, I mean, there was a ton of shit she did. But the other thing that she did that also really, to me, seemed to work to undermine the marriage was, I would do what I needed to do to take care of the bills and shit. And I'd give the husband whatever money I could. I mean, the money he needed for gas and stuff. And because she thought her baby boy should be able to buy snacks and shit, instead of letting him learn how to manage the money I gave him for his gas and whatever else, she always gave him extra money behind my back. It was irritating, folks. It was so fucking irritating. Anyway, so on the backdrop of this and other issues with his mother interfering with our marriage, I finally said, the Bible says to leave your parents and cleave unto your wife. I think you need help doing that, so I'm done with this until you get some counseling from the church. And he said, okay, I will get counseling from the church. Well, that church. He came home one day and he says to me, so in our counseling session today, the church, now mind you, we'd been going to this church for ages, folks. Ages. Years. We were both in this church. We had both been active. They christened at least 2 of our kids. I'd had some other run-ins with some of the leadership in the church. They didn't like AD&D, for example. Dungeons and Dragons. I told them it was just a game, so whatever they were hearing. Yeah, no. But at any rate, so we'd been going to this church for ages. They knew us. They knew me. And he comes home one day and he says, well, when we were in the counseling this time, they asked me out of the situation if maybe you were manipulating me. I was so fucking pissed. I was so pissed. Oh my God, people, I can't even tell you. So yeah, I stopped going to that church. And our marriage fell apart not too long after. But I was definitely, and at that point, I couldn't I couldn't put into words what was going on. But now I just realize it's the inherent misogyny of the Christian church. And it wasn't too long after that. Thinking here. What do I want to do? And it wasn't too long after that I pretty much decided, that's it. I'm done. And at first, I you're not showing up the way I want you to show up. Show up, damn it. At first, I just did my own thing. I still worshiped God. I still read the Bible, studied the Bible. And when I mean studied, when I say studied, I mean studied. I studied in the way a college student would study something. I'm a little lost up here. It doesn't have to be exact. I keep telling myself it doesn't have to be exact. Right? I had books on the original languages. I had encyclopedias. I had all kinds of things to help me study this Bible. But as it got more, well, a couple things. I was trying to take care of my kids. And because I now was on my own, no longer had a husband to support me, which is why the trad wife thing bothers me now. It's great if that's what you want to do, but make sure to have some kind of backup for yourself, because divorce happens. If all you know how to do is housekeeping stuff, it's going to be tough for you if you ever end up on your own. So, right after I kicked him out and before the divorce papers were finalized, I went back to school. I had gone to college before. I'd gotten my AA in early childhood education. And actually, I should say, I went to college before at my mother's insistence when I had no idea what I wanted to do. I got some of my general eds out of the way, and that was it. That was it. The first time I wasn't very serious as a student, I went in and I remember being in a astronomy class, astronomy sciences. It was one of my science classes, and we were studying astronomy at the time. And one of the other students and I were making jokes about Mars having ketchup oceans and being overrun by French fry people. Like I said, not serious. I was not a serious student. I was not a serious student at that time. But that was right out of high school. So here I am a few years later with a couple kids depending on me. My leaves are a bit thicker than their leaves, a bit wider. But here I am, a single mom, about to be a single mom, kids depending on me. I took that shit seriously now. I did what they call overload every semester and every quarter, and I got my AA in early childhood studies, and that's where I met my second husband, by the way. And then that was in a junior college, and then in my university, I got my Bachelor's of Arts in English, because I actually intended to go on for a teaching certification. Yeah, that went down pretty fast for other reasons. But yeah, I intended to get my teaching certification. That didn't happen, but in the meantime, I got my BA in English. And that's about the time we figured out that my son was autistic. Up until that point, well, initially, the doctor said that there was nothing wrong with him, that he would speak in his own time. But I knew there was, you know when there's something wrong with your baby. And I knew, and these doctors were shining me on, and I knew they were shining me on. And someone stepped in and directed us to the Inland Regional Center, and helped us with a complete diagnostic. And my son ended up being diagnosed with ASD, high function, moderate but high functioning ASD, and developmental delays, which of course included his speech. And when I went into my schooling, even my early childhood education, schooling, well, I know part of it is I need to finish out enough to draw the lines and the crinkles, but I'm needing something else there. So let's try a deeper color, a slightly different color, and see if that gives me what I want. But anyway, I want to get rid of this, finish this story. So I went in. I think that's what I needed. Slightly different color. So I did my education in that, and then I minored in psychology and particularly in communication, which includes a lot of language development. But anyway, during this time, I honestly got too busy. I mean, I'm taking 24 units at the semester level and 18 at the quarterly level. And yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. And coming home and having to take care of the kids. I had a friend who was helping me out as long as she could eat and had a place to be. She was more than willing to keep an eye on my kids. I couldn't afford to pay her. So I got lucky in that regard. I had a friend who was willing to watch my children, and they developed some very lifelong bonds with her because she was their caregiver. When I was doing my BA, I was leaving the house at 6 o'clock in the morning and not getting home until 11 o'clock at night. And most of that time I didn't eat, which is how I became anemic, but we'll get into that into another day. But honestly, having done doing all that schooling, I wasn't missing the Bible stuff at all. And then later, as things went on, those contradictions and the misogyny and just all the problems with it just really I just really started thinking about them and realizing that this wasn't the way for me. And I walked away entirely. I walked away from the church. I walked away from the Bible. I still know it. I read it a lot. I read it a lot. I had studied it pretty thoroughly. Yeah? I knew it. I still know a lot of it. I can't say I remember everything from it. Unfortunately, the ADHD and the anemia, have Swiss cheesed my brain. It wasn't until I was about 55, 56, 57, whenever it is, I finally started getting in touch with my dad's side and started thinking about who I was, that I started trying to figure out what my spirituality would be. And I have been exploring my Taino ancestors and that spirituality. So I walked away from the church entirely by then. So we don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I now know the real stories about what happened with Columbus and my people, and that whole holiday is a blood-soaked massacre holiday to me. So we don't celebrate it. We celebrate our indigenous roots now. And we bring in food from, right now it's mostly Taino, from Puerto Rico. It needs some work, but I think we're doing it. Yeah? What do you think? It needs a little bit of work. Just working on these two. See, mine are fatter. But I'm learning that with the makeup, everything's going to be fatter. It's not going to be as defined. I have to define it when it's done with the ink around the edges. But I'm not unhappy with that. It just looks weird. It needs more. We're gonna get more. We're gonna get more. Alrighty, so I think what I'm gonna have to do to get some of this veining and stuff in, I'm not sure how well you can see all that, is to use my pencils and pens more than my makeup. I am gonna work on one spot and see what I can do with that. I think one of the first things I want to do is, first of all, see if I can get a good pencil line in for where the split is, and then work on everything to that side of the split. Trying to get some dark shading on this end before I start trying to do this veining. Part of the problem is going to be that I have one of the things I did on my first image, my first orange slices, was that I used gel pens. Unfortunately, the gel pens I have are crap. So I don't know how well they're going to do their thing. Since pencil doesn't seem to show up well, I'm going to try to do this with pen. And I'm going to try to do it with pen right now that's pretty close to the color in the picture. Because I don't want to risk making a mess of it, if that makes any sense. Although I'm probably going to make a mess of it. Okay, so I'm seeing a little bit of lining from the pen, the gel pen, but I am not sure how that is helping. Yes, baby. Hubby and I just got in a bit of a tiff. We are fine. Don't do that. Hi. Get your paws off of there. Thank you. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Everything's fine. I'm going to try using some of this to get those lines in. And then setting them with this, or with a light color, light green. And see if that does it for us, because that... So we're going to get some of this. And go along our edges first, because there's some fuzziness along the edges. Now the good thing about this is it does not set quickly. So I could go ahead and work with this, whereas the gel pens, they dry down pretty fast, and the liquid chalk pen I have, they dry down pretty quickly. And I'm actually going to use a slightly different color for my set, I think. White shows up better. And I can depending on what I want. I think that shows up a little better as a test. It definitely shows up a little better as a test. And using this can help me correct some color issues, I think. Because up here, there is actually a color closer to this than the limey greens of the rest of it. throw a little bit of white on top of that too. Yeah. I think I've actually color matched a little bit. These need to be done a little better. These lines, I think. I got it. And then use this to help just along the edge. Right. So yeah, I think this is going to be a better option for the veining than the gel pen. And the liquid chalk pens are, not only are they too wide, but they dry very, very fast. So this will actually be a much better solution for what I need. Alrighty. I think the only thing I'm having an issue with right now, as usual, is the amount of saturation. It just looks fuzzy. And I have to keep reminding myself. That this is a different medium. It's not going to be, you know, as solid as paint or pen. It's going to have that fuzziness about it. So I definitely have to learn to let go a little bit of my expectations, I guess. Yeah, it's hard to do sometimes. Especially when you tend to be a bit of a perfectionist anyway. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. For all the fussing on one section of a leaf, I'm happy with that. Okay. You can't see the lines much anymore. They're in there, but you can't see them much anymore. But we're going to see more of them in this area on the rest of this thing and up in here. But yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, so I think that's going to be it for this session. I need to just chill for a bit. Art is my happy place, but yeah, apparently some people can come in and ruin my happy place for me. How's that for sad? But anyway, so yeah, I think this is gonna be about it, and I hope you like what you've seen, and that you'll go ahead and like, share, subscribe, comment down below. warning, we will be working on the leaves for a little bit before we get down to everything else. Uh, the one thing that did seem to work from my previous 2 attempts on the abstract was making sure to work on the section in this, working this way to avoid smudging too much in the other areas. So we're going to continue to do that. And that means a lot more focus on certain sections of a piece than before. There won't be as much spreading around and doing more and more areas. I'm going to work one section till it's pretty close to done, and then move before we move on. And so be expecting more of that and more of that kind of thing to go on. I hope that won't bother you all too much. I'm really enjoying doing this, except for when I screw up or when I feel like I'm not getting a project done. I am learning to let go of that too. We all have to learn of things to let go. But at any rate, like I said, that's it for the day, and I hope you like what you've seen, that you'll go ahead and like, subscribe, share, comment down below what you think, how it's going, and all that other stuff. And we shall see you later. Bye.